Good afternoon, everybody. I will start today's press conference with a topic that I know that many would like to know more about, and that is the status of on-island testing for COVID-19. Following that, I will give an overview of an update from an EMO meeting held earlier today, and will discuss matters related to self-quarantine and also to requirements that are for social distancing in the country. I am pleased to announce that on-island testing for COVID-19 has commenced, and they are being provided with a maximum 48-hour turnaround for results here on island. This is a significant step and is a partnership between the Ministry of Health, Helix Laboratories, and the Bermuda Hospitals Board, and I'm certain that this is relieving news for the community. The Ministry of Health is currently being guided by Public Health England and the Pan American Health Organization every step of the way. In the past week, we have known, or the past few weeks, there's been an increasing demand for on-island testing. But I think it is prudent to remind people to be guided by science and international evidence-based best practice and not to be swept into panic buying of inaccurate test results. The Ministry of Health is to be commended for securing this capability, which will certainly speed the government's ability to detect any community spread which may be taking place on island. I understand, as per the update that the Minister of Health gave to the EMO meeting, that samples were collected yesterday in the hospital. They were started to be processed earlier today, and the processing will finish tomorrow, and hopefully we will have results on on Sunday. What is important, however, and as I mentioned, when we are speaking about panic and where people get into panic buying, I want to make sure that we caution members of the public against purchasing COVID-19 point-of-care blood tests, which promise instant results in only a few minutes. The Ministry of Health is unaware of any validated rapid point-of-care tests for COVID-19 that have been independently scientifically validated to give reliable results. The use of non-validated testing can produce a false negative result, which could lull people into a false sense of security and can unconsciously lead to more spreading of COVID-19. The public are reminded that the testing criteria for Bermuda is guided by the World Health Organization and will be updated if and when that particular guidance is updated. This does mean that not every single person in Bermuda will be eligible to be tested for COVID-19, as we know that there is limited testing supply in Bermuda. The guidance that is going to be followed is from the World Health Organization. However, the Ministry of Health may be testing people who may have been exposed to persons who have tested positive to COVID-19. It's important to note that there are currently only 150 tests that are on island. However, the total order that was initially placed was 950. The additional 800 tests are expected to arrive on the island over the next 2 weeks. In addition, the ministry has placed an additional order to make sure that there is even increased testing capacity as we go forward over the next few weeks. Again, this is a significant step. I'd like to thank the Minister of Health and her team for working to get us to this particular point where we can certainly diagnose these matters a lot quicker here on island. Now for an update from the EMO. Earlier today, the EMO met to get a full assessment from its public and private sector members. Again, with the docks, we continue to receive goods in the island, and we have normal cargo operations. As can be seen, the docks were floated and fresh produce was being delivered to stores today. Regarding the airport, as of 11:59 tonight, the LF Wade International Airport will close for scheduled commercial passenger flights. In conjunction with the U.S. Consul General, a Delta Airlines flight will arrive in Bermuda tomorrow afternoon, bringing some returning residents, and U.S. citizens wishing to return to the United States may also catch this flight back to the United States tomorrow. That is a Delta flight. Also, yesterday, the Canadian consulate contacted our office to ask permission for a WestJet plane to arrive in Bermuda on Sunday. Their intention was this to come to Bermuda as a ferry, so it will become Bermuda empty, and return with Canadian citizens who may wish to endure this current global pandemic inside of their country of citizenship or residence. We made the request that given that there still may be some Bermudians in Canada, that we extend the opportunity for Bermudians who may be in Canada to return as well. Therefore, they have accepted that request, and I'm pleased to announce that at 2:00 p.m. on Sunday, the 22nd of March, WestJet 2710 will depart from Toronto, Canada, bound for Bermuda, and is scheduled to depart that evening, Sunday evening, at 6:32 p.m. to return to Toronto. And what I would note is that certainly any persons who are watching this live or listening live should make sure that they notify their friends and family who may either be looking for flights from the United States or flights from Canada to be aware of these and to make those arrangements so they can get back home should they wish. There are 5 flights coming in today with returning residents, and customs and public health officers will follow the same self-quarantine protocols that were in place yesterday for returning residents. Last evening, the Minister of National Security, Wayne Keynes, went to the airport to observe the process, and by all accounts, that process was a smooth one. I would like to thank the Royal Bermuda Regiment for their critical assistance in helping to maintain the social distance of arriving passengers. We did see some of the social media from Wednesday or early arrivals in the week where there were a lot of persons that were crowded into spaces. That did not happen last evening, and it's important that we maintain social distancing the entire time. And as it's something that we're trying to make sure that we enforce in the public, it's also important to make sure that it is enforced during that particular arrival process. Regarding the government, we will be releasing a full list of government departments that are fully open, that are partially open, or that are not operational at all. And these particular matters will be reviewed. Members of the media can expect that shortly after this press conference, but it is an extensive list, and I'm not going to take the time to go through every single government department, but it will be able to be posted on your various sites. However, the post office will be, as of 1 today, all post office locations have closed, and no local mail is currently being processed. Regarding public transportation, recognizing that public transportation has been suspended for now and that we have a number of health professionals who use public transportation, the Department of Public Transportation will put on a special pickup service for our key health workers, such as nurses, health technicians, and caregivers, and those details would be shared as finalized. The public was advised earlier today all essential services within the Department of Works and Engineering are currently operating normally, and this includes the public access to the Tynes Bay Waste-to-Energy facility. We do understand that there are some challenges with trash collection currently. It is expected that trash collection will continue to operate normally, but the Minister of Public Works is currently at a meeting at the Marsh Folly facility, and I'll be providing a more detailed update on that when we are able to do so. It is important to note when it comes to the issue of public transportation and the decisions of which the government made when it came to the suspension of education and other matters. Given that we did not have on-island testing capability here, we took decisions out of abundance of caution to ensure that there was no possibility of community spread here on island. Now that we have testing capability on island, we can better assess what the potential community spread is, and we will be re-examining any potential public services that may be able to restart it at a limited basis based upon where we stand currently. However, those decisions will only be made based upon the available evidence and dealing with the testing that we have here on island. Regarding the Department of Education, I want to emphasize to all our school leaders and educators the important role they play in keeping our children engaged while schools are currently closed due to the ongoing pandemic. As teachers and school staff engage students in remote learning experiences, it will keep our students focused on learning and off the streets. All school staff were expected to engage students in remote learning experiences during the entire week of March 23rd using a variety of online learning platforms. This method of learning is aligned with 21st century practices and also supports the Ministry of Health's COVID-19 guidelines of heightening social distancing and government's call for national participation in this regard. The main objective during school closures are ensuring a quality learning experience for students, maintaining routines similar to school routines, and providing ongoing communication to students, parents, and other school staff. Now, it is also important to note that parents have a role to play in this as well. And as someone had commented to me earlier today, and I'll get to that later when we're talking about the importance of social distancing, that the city of Hamilton looked like it was cup match. I'm uncertain if members of the public are understanding that how serious this situation has the potential to be. None of us want to see what has taken place inside of other countries to happen here. And I will go into the strict social distancing guidelines, which will soon be issued by the government and will be enforceable under the various Public Health Act and Quarantine Acts. However, I want to also state that we recognize that inside of our school system, there are parents who are frontline workers in essential services who may have those particular services disrupted because their children are in school. And so what I would say, and have their children in school. So what I would say in this particular circumstance is that we are also looking through the Department of Education to provide minor services for persons who may be frontline workers to see if we can provide limited services to make sure that those are handled. Finally, it is important to reemphasize the important messages from the Ministry of Health regarding social distancing and self-quarantine. We stress that if you have traveled from a country with local transmission of COVID-19, and that is all of our gateway jurisdictions, you are required to self-quarantine for 14 days. Self-quarantine is used to prevent the possible spread of COVID-19. And it means that a person, even if you have those symptoms, must stay in their home or accommodation and must maintain their distance from others. It is important to note that these quarantine measures are now enforceable under public health regulations, which have been gazetted today. The measure of self-quarantine is an important and significant step to prevent the spread of COVID-19. Enforceable penalties include a fine up to $6,000 for the first offense, and for a second offense up to $10,000 or imprisonment for 3 months. This is something that is serious, and it is essential that members of the public protect Bermuda by observing their self-quarantine. If you are quarantined, you must not leave your house. This means that you should not go to work, you should not visit seniors, you should not attend church or church meetings, go to the grocery stores, certainly not attend a party, go to the movies, attend funerals, or go to the beach, visit restaurants, or even to the gas station. The only way that Bermuda is going to remain protected from what other countries are seeing if self-quarantine is strictly followed, and all of us have a role to play. It is not a joke if you have returned overseas and you think that it's okay to possibly slip out. You may, even though you're not exhibiting symptoms, be able to be passing on this disease, and what may happen is that may be transmitted to seniors in our community unwittingly and can cause persons serious health issues. This is not a joke, and everybody in this country has a role to play when it comes to that. I recognize that clearly these are extremely difficult and uncomfortable circumstances, but these steps are being taken to preserve life on island. The government will also be releasing a series of items which came from the Ministry of Health speaking about the public health guidelines and social distancing guidelines. What is important is that there is new news that is going to be made today, speaking about the items, the businesses which will be asked to close their operations for the time being. And those are operations which can certainly speed the spread of any community transmission of COVID-19. So I want to make sure that this is made clear. Restaurants and dine-in restaurants were able to remain open with social distancing. They are to keep tables at a minimum of 1 meter away with a maximum of 50 people. Now, this is important to note. If your restaurant cannot keep people 1 meter away and it's a dine-in, the maximum of 50 is for a large space, but that is the total maximum. If your space is smaller, that does not mean that you can put 50 people into a small space. It is important to note that these items and the following businesses can be enforced under regulations, and enforcement officers will request businesses to close if they are not following these regulations. It makes sense for companies to follow the regulations versus them being ordered to be shut down by the Minister of Health. Going forward, and this is particularly important, pools, and this is inside of hotels, pools will be asked to close. Gyms inside of hotels will be closed. Bars, indoors and outdoors, will be a maximum of 15 persons with social distancing of 1 meter or 3 feet. We will recognize that there are powers to close liquor license establishments. If liquor license establishments are not following these social distancing rules, they will be ordered to close. So it is up to business owners whether or not they want to enforce social distancing, or if they want to voluntarily close, or if they will be closed by government authorities. Gyms will be asked at this point in time to close. Beauty salons and barbers will be at this time asked to close. Church services and weddings at this point in time will be asked to not take place. And funeral services are allowed with social distancing. However, it will be a maximum of 10 persons indoors, and graveside services can be held outdoors with appropriate social distancing. Bars and clubs outside of hotels, social clubs, bars, and nightclubs will be a maximum of 15 persons with social distancing of at least 1 meter or 3 feet. That means if you have music playing inside of a bar and persons are closer than 1 meter or 3 feet, you have the possibility of being shut down and your liquor license being temporarily suspended. This is not a joke. We all have a role to play. We will be releasing the full social distancing guidelines, but those are the new business regulations which will be coming into place and which will be enforceable underneath the Public Health Act, underneath the name of the Minister of Health. What is important to note is that we are watching and learning from other nations on how to tackle this pandemic. And despite the dreadful developments that we've witnessed in some countries, there are also pockets of good news. For example, earlier this week, we saw that China closed down its last special COVID-19 hospital as there were not enough new cases to support them. In South Korea, the number of new cases has been declining. And even here in Bermuda, the 2 positive imported cases were never hospitalized and themselves are recovering. So, if we follow the instructions and rules, if we all do our part, we can make sure that we are a success story and not a story that is covered for the wrong reasons. However, I want everyone to know, business owner, person of faith, communities of faith, persons inside the community, all of us have a role to play. And the government, with the new regulations that were issued today, will not hesitate to ensure that these regulations are enforced. It is a responsibility of all of us to keep our country safe, and I am going to ask that everyone police themselves, police their neighbors, encourage each other, and let us get through this particularly pandemic together. United, Bermuda is strong, and I expect us to continue united so that we can come through this particular pandemic, strong and ready to have a next chapter of our history. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to take any questions that members of the media may have.